Hello, welcome. It's your Happy Healer lover here, Keith Landy. I am so happy to have you on the show this evening. I feel like we're going to have a good one. And guess what? Everything's working properly, so we'll go ahead and turn that down. And so today I had, by the way, it is July 28th, at 7 p.m. sharp. Like I say, you can always count on your Happy Healer lover to be here Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 7 p.m. sharp each one of those nights, so that you can experience the wonderful extravaganza that is AmericanMantics with your Happy Healer lover each one of those evenings. And remember, we're going to be bringing about the kinds of content that help gear us towards the new world. And I know you've heard about other people talking about it and God's plan. So one of the things that we've been doing is keeping up the banner to remind you what we're working for, what we're about, that we all care about each other, that we're working for a mission. It's so important that we have a mission built in our ways when we work for God. We can't just go the empty way like how the current world does things, how Greedhell does things, quite apparently. And it's members of our group, our lovely group, that have seen that and have brought it to our attention. And remember, we air on roughly 30 channels throughout the internet. It's our way of being able to reach out and make an impact. And there's a community that stretches out that large, and it's all part of the same community of lovers, happy and so certain of what is their value and human value is, and that people, they have worth, and that it's ordained by our Creator, and they don't forget that. And one of the things that I don't forget is that and I tell it to you every single day, all of the time, I am your Happy Healer lover. I'm your Happy Healer lover. And so with that, I want to be representing you the best that I can, because I understand this relationship is one where we count on and rely on one another. And that's how the world of God's love works, as opposed to Greedhell. And that is the way we see things now, unfortunately. So I wanted to go over some videos this evening, and it was a rush all throughout the day, getting things prepared and just dealing with today as it was. And I was running up to the minute getting here by 7 p.m. Although, of course, that's very important to me, as you know. And so what the whole objective for today is, I want to talk a little bit deeper, just because we touched a bit on episode 6, the spiritual aspects, and I've had other people asking me questions, and I'm going to address those questions on air tonight. People are private sometimes, so I won't always reveal their identity, but rest assured, we have a vibrant and loving community, and I'm sure the more that they see themselves on air or spoken about, or things they've asked about, that they'll not mind having their identities on air. So we'll see about that. That's neither here nor there, and not everybody certainly is that pertains to. And so I just like to respect people. It's very important, because I care about you all. You all matter to me. We're working for an objective I'm so focused on. I know you are too, so that's what I am eager to get done, not offend anybody just because we're sharing some lovely content. And so yeah, never forget that. Never forget that I'm yours, and essentially that I'm here working for you, and that just, I work for you. I am your Happy Healer, not the devil's, right? That's Greedhell. I'm here for you. That's the spirit that's happy on the inside, that longs for a better life, and it knows what we are supposed to have. And as for me, I simply belong to you. That also precious you on the inside of your being, calling out for a more meaningful and happy experience and better life. To experience life. To experience it with other people. Also precious. And together, enjoying life and realizing that there's a point, those honest brokers of truth within each of us, so eager to see a better world emerge. Some are pessimistic, and I don't work for that view. The honest broker of truth within you doesn't want me working for the part of anyone that stows confusion that is allowed to enter their brain sphere. People become confused in some ways, don't they? And if we can remove that confusion for the honest broker of truth within on each one of us, and it's what your Happy Healer specializes in, we get past those barriers fast and get to that happy place, which unites all honest brokers of truth focused on what matters most. You can trust that so much is that you are you, and you are you, just as any of us are ourselves. The honest broker of truth within all of us speaks to the larger truths in life. No matter what else is happening, if you are listening to your honest broker of truth within yourself, that self-consciousness that tells us the estimation of the world's activities and that it's leading us down a dark and dangerous path. It's the honest broker of truth. Inside, it's screaming out and hoping to be heard over all the hate, hell, and frustration that's out there. Pure fear. It's all the devil's game. Greed is a power that controls them. So they rely on greed and fear that gives them the answers. And their answers are almost always distrust and war. That's what we see. But that's not what the honest broker of truth decided or sees. That part of you realizes when bad things happen, there are always consequences to those bad things. In terms of AmericanMantics, I am always talking to that honest broker of truth within you. And if you have the patience, even if it's hard at first, eventually it'll catch on. And your honest broker of truth within your spirit will respond. It's just how we're made. The energy shows us this truth, and all of it is solid as any other truth in our lives, our experiences, and so on. It's what makes sense out of our worlds and the way we must get comfortable in living. We do our best to channel the deepest part of ourselves, our honest broker of truth within, every time we make a huge life decision, such as marriage. People don't want to feel like they're doing the wrong thing. That's another example of the honest broker of truth leaning outward and doing its best to express its will upon the world around us, mainly so that you can survive. Even in some cases, the things you do to survive seems like it's your greatest belief. However, that's only in a world of lowered expectations, like in how Greedhell is. Think about that. We can honestly do so much better if we just come together and working for a better world. So what I would like to do now is first take a sip of my Diet Coke. Yummy, yummy. I know some people say it's great for you, others say it's bad. But you want to know something? President Trump, he drinks Diet Coke, so guess what? I drink Diet Coke. You don't like it? Tough. Just kidding, I love you. I can't even play, can I? But you know what? Sometimes I'm just going to give you these impersonations because I do pretty good at that stuff and it lights up the mood. And, so it's just the way I operate, you know what I mean? Keeps the flow going. It keeps the smiles smiling. And it keeps the information tingling into the brain and making new connections. And your happy healer loves it. Your happy healer loves it. It's just the way it goes. Your happy healer loves it. So, can you reach down and touch your toes? You ever stand up and bend over just so you can get some good rhythm in the day? Not me, because I'm in a van. That's funny as heck. So who's on board, baby? I love you all. You are all so great. I just got to say how great you are. And, so I had a question. And what the question was, and I'm just going to go ahead and read it to you. Now, mind you, on these pages in our community, I'm all the time talking to you guys. I know who you are, and I love you. And this is about us. This is an exercise in faith, and I've always felt this way about us. We are God's people. And I reach out and I speak to you guys about various topics, things that are happening in current times, very concerning things, really. Everything from existential life ending catastrophes to just annoyances and disturbances and issues of irritation and nuisance. And it seems like from everything in between those two extremes, people are just pressed to the extreme. And that's what I'm talking about when I say, man, aren't they just pushing us to the edge? People are so mad and angry, and it makes for good sense because it was their intention the whole time. And they're not the ones that should be winning this war. They work for the devil. So let's get on to the right path here. Let's not let that happen. And that's what, AmericanMantics is about. And, you're not supposed to get too trippy either when I say the devil. Some people in their faith tells them the devil doesn't exist. And I'm just fine with that. It's evil. It's however you want to explain when people do the worst things. And I'm clued up on all of it. I don't know how much of this kind of stuff in the world you allow to enter your brainosphere, okay? In your mind sphere. And how much of this you take in, because I know that it's not pleasant stuff oftentimes. But I think in order to understand what's happening in the real world, you have to just be humble and say, this is God's world. And if the devil's bringing to us some ugly stuff, we're going to have to see it so we can fix it. And anything that's not brought to the light, then that's when children are abused for years and years. That's when some of the worst things happen. And what I would have to tell people that say, oh, well, there's no devil, I would just have to say then, there's evil. And you just have to point to that kind of stuff and say, the evil exists in that person. And just like I know the love exists in this person, and quite frankly, what this is a great big spiritual war, a battle, more than a battle, a war, and it's happening inside the human soul. And it's for this evil that I would say, And personally, the devil's just fine with me. Greed is the force. That's how it's outwardly presented. You know, folks, one thing that a lot of spiritual leaders and even there's a lot of connections between the spiritual agenda and the political agenda. There really are. There's, for one thing, we're one nation under God. You know, when you take that out, it changes things that are fundamental to our nation, that makes us who we are. And that was there for a reason, for a very good reason. And these forces and energies, these are what they're out to control. You know this, I hope, because what you see on the outside is quite minimal in comparison. But there is a great spiritual battle. And the way you know that they're winning is that God's people, that represents freedom and the will to survive and the will for happiness and for that to exist in a land and to be so strong and free, that to them is a threat to what their agenda is. Remember, they have a unity too, and this force, and I describe it just as it is. It's the demanding force. It demands what it wants. It doesn't ask you. Why would it ask you if it has the power over you? What need does it have to ask you? If you say no, it doesn't care. So it's not going to ask you. That's what it does in Greedhell. And you see it over and over and over again. So in the extreme, it's China in a one-party system. The communist system is a dictatorship, essentially. As an individual, you couldn't express your free will to the extent that you are speaking to the government. You'll certainly lose your happiness in that world. And so when we talk about freedom and being close to God's world of love and truth, it's all of that. If you don't have the freedom to express that will, which is why we came to this country in the first place, and now they're tearing it out, if you don't have that, then you'll never get to the promised land, the better land. And what I know we need to do, and this is just pure brilliance, what I know we need to do is we need to bring together the people. That's the spirit. That's where we win. Remember, after 9/11, we had an over 90% unity. Now, they squandered it. They didn't do good things with it. But that's a power, because you can get things done. And that kind of unity after 9/11 wasn't even that strong. That was like a revenge unity. When you have a unity that's based on hope and inspiration and building up, not tearing down, that's a much stronger unity, where people know that when they're doing it because people matter. That's why we're building up our cities and new institutions that are meant to serve people who have been ignored and lonely and forgotten and depressed. And that these institutions aren't just up to problem solve for a month and then go away again, but rather we're changing the way we're living, that we care, and that people are involved. They're faith-based institutions, and that people involve that energy and spirit and love and God in unity. God is unity and love. That's what love is. So that's building God's world. That's using God's strength. That's how we can build up that great big world. And that's how it builds so much faster than what Greedhell does, because Greedhell relies on corruption and lies. People get so filthy rich, they can't even be bribed anymore. The bribes have to go up to absurd amounts, and they're paid, all at the backs of people from the bottom. There's these class systems where the one at the top is the one smooching the most out of the system. And, you know, because everybody's total summation of output is our net capability as a country. And what's ultimately happening is there's 10 different class systems that I'm estimating, and each one of them are in their own right, you know, have certain privileges and standards that they feel, and it's unhealthy for that unity. When we're talking about a unity, because these get in the way of that. That's always what greed and the system of greed is about, is creating these class systems. Anything that divides, it'll divide you this way, divide you this way. It's trying to make it so impossible that you could ever come back together again, that it's busting you in a million pieces. That's how you know that what you're dealing with is a very formidable enemy. This is the devil, and it's evil, and it exists, and it's cunning, and it's all those things that has always been described in describing the nature of the serpent. And whereas God and love and the power of love and courage knows why it's doing what it's doing. It stops and takes stock in the value of human beings who matter everywhere, in their own value. And love uses a power that's so much stronger than greed can ever muster. Remember, greed can only ever steal from love anyways. And that's how greed gets its power ultimately, by taking from people who have worked, maybe they're doctors in an organization like what happened with my brother, where they're meant to serve humanity, meant to make people feel better, and get out of sickness and go on to happier lives. But that system is broken as we know it. When my brother went through there, he didn't get the care he should have gotten. And a lot of mistakes were made, and mistakes based on cost-conscious considerations rather than health-conscious considerations, life-conscious considerations. Their systems were backwards, and people die because of it. Greed kills. That's the message. Greed kills. What kills? Greed kills. Every time. Greed kills every time. And so you never have to wonder what kills. That's what's doing it. And that's why greed essentially is that cunning devil. It's because you wouldn't recognize that it's so destructive, in that it's on top of everything else that ever goes bad. It's on top of the corruption. It's on top of the bad decisions. Before, it's always about, oh, well, I want that lady, I'm going to go take her, rape. It's just doing the worst things possible. This is exactly working in the evil hemisphere of your brain. It's exactly giving to the devil in the war of good and evil, or to evil in the war of good and evil. However you want to, people that get triggered by words and then it blocks them from receiving information, they should really take stock in their own lives and how much they're blocking out. Think about that. They hear something that it appears to be right. It scares them that maybe in some way, form, or fashion that their lives might actually be not as perfect as they thought. And they'd rather close out to the truth, which is actually hope. Because when you know you can improve, that's hope. That's the truth working for you. That's what the energy of God is. But in the world of fear and greed, it's much easier for these folks in that mind frame to close down and to shut down. That's why your happy healer, when he talks to him, he says, I love you. Don't you know I love you? And he says, we're talking from the honest broker of truth within. So you don't go running from me, because you already know I love you. This is completely different than how everybody else is approaching you these days, isn't it? And the truth of the matter is, I've been your happy healer for many years at this point. I'm not changing. This is the right way to go. What they're doing's wrong. They look at me sometimes and they say, oh, this guy's insane. He talks about love. And I look at them and their wars and their hate and their hell and their destruction, their divorces. Just constant, never-ending misery and depression and death. Lots of death, my goodness. And they're calling me insane? Are you kidding me? I want to put the power that builds on fire. I want to set it free. I want to build the world of abundance and see the first American super consumers. That's what I want to see. I want to see us going to a type 1 civilization, because the fact of the matter is, either we're advancing and making ourselves more capable of dealing with increasing threats in the world, or we're not, like how Rome did. It got comfortable and fat and argued with itself in between and lost its soul. It couldn't make heads or tails of anything. That's what's happening. It's insane. And you're happy healer when I'll stand for it, because we know what's right. And what's right is love and truth. Don't you let your mind get confused. Don't you let them throw you off and make you become some hurtful, hateful, evil person, because we all have it in us to do that. This is the world of Greedhell. By golly, it's all we ever known. We have to build the world of love, and it's our responsibility to do that. and to be inspired and to be open and to allow ourselves to channel into the passion that believes in the idealistic world. It is not a utopian world. Love doesn't assume that everything's perfect. It knows things are messed up. The difference between love and greed is that love takes the effort to fix things and make it right, doesn't accept this failure. And greed, on the other hand, causes it all. Corruption, hell, and I mean, you've got the world's natural problems. Now, these problems really aren't problems at all. God's gifted us the ability to make electrical ability. I mean, we're electrical beings practically in God's magical world. There's so many gifts to learn about and to see in science. It's amazing. We live in the world of forces, and God's almighty force is love, and it's what works the most, because when we put our minds to anything we put our minds to, we achieve it. And that's the power of God's love. And so when greed ever wants something, it has to steal from that. Greed doesn't have that energy working for it, don't you know? It's a broke energy. It's a dead energy. And so it falters and fails and causes the hell that we see all around us, and the misery and the depression. And that's why we have to address this in quite straight and direct terms so that people understand. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's not really discussed in such direct terms if you think about it. And I have to adjust this camera a little bit, I noticed. How about that? And I hope you guys and gals and beautiful people yummy. That was yummy. So, back to the questions. She asked me, well, now you know it was a she, but that's so far as you're gonna get. Okay, let me grab this. I have a question. Do you take God's word spiritual or literally, and why? What are the differences between the two? And that was what she asked. And so if you're watching, you know who you are. And instead of answering on the message on email, I'll just answer you right here. And I'll do that a lot, by the way, when you guys message me questions. And I love it when you ask questions as well. So, do I take God's word is spiritually or literally? I think there's meaning and value in both. What I don't do, here's one thing that Greedhell often does, is it's always out to confuse people and use these euphemisms to describe its world in simple ways to make you go along. And it'll always tell you to simplify things. Don't be so complicated, my goodness. Well, for one thing, greed is never out to get into anything that deep. It's only worried about making profit and getting the heck out. So it's bare minimum kind of stuff to start with. And what I say is that greed, when you think of minimalism or being simple about solving problems or dealing with people, for example, or when describing a person or an attribute of a person, or in any way that you're describing value of humanity, that's always true. Yes, be simple. I agree. You got it, Greedhell. But here's the big difference, and this is where the trickery comes in. But never more simple than you actually are. So don't be wasteful, no. Be efficient. But never more simple than the problem demands, than the people demand, than the quality demands. Yeah, be simple, but never more simple than We actually are. That's how I'll put that. And that's what Greedhell often does. So when I think of, do I take God's word spiritually or literally, it is a combination of both, depending on how you're using and relating with and conveying and expressing and comprehending the Word of God and how you see the world around you, because God speaks to you in your heart as well. Everybody has their own relationship with God. In fact, that's where you build your faith. And I've seen miracles, wonderful miracles. They've been so strong in building your Happy Healer's faith. So, what are the differences between the two? And now that's a good one. Spiritually is always going to be that strong unity energy that brings us together, that fills our heart. It's always going to be that care energy. You need to have this care. We all need this care. And because we've been really, people almost don't even believe in this energy at all, and yet it manifests itself quite fine. It's the American spirit. You've heard a lot of it. It's a real thing. And the left and the right do it perfectly, but to a point of zero sum, unfortunately. And by design. Don't you know that's by design? That is absolutely by design. When you see what's happening is actually hurting both sides, to people on both sides, and there's other people on the outside laughing about it and benefiting from it, well, then you know that's unbelievably by design. Not just people, but the energies too. So you talk about the spiritual energies. Well, remember, this greed is a spiritual energy, and it manifests itself in our world just by having influence in our lives. That's the way this energy matters. That's how this force shows itself. That's how the truth of this force can be read so easily. That's how God's truth can be read so easily. You see the truth of His creation all around us. And even science says energy, it can materialize from material and energy are interchangeable. I've learned so much about energy. You've seen me wiring things around here, working on Happy Force 1, and it's fascinating what energy is. Those wires with the atoms and the electrons running around the neutrons and protons and all this activity, and they're moving at the speed of light. Would you imagine that? It's so infinitesimally tiny and yet moving so incredibly fast. That's the power of God's energy at work. And it takes so many of those just to make anything. Just to make this drink, my goodness, so many atoms. And can you imagine every last one of those atoms are electrical? In that if the electrons are slightly greater in one or the other, they're easily past the extra electron. Usually when metals, for example, have an extra electron or even sometimes more, and on these odd numbers where these electrons just can be interchanged between material, literal matter, exchanged through energy, traveling through material. This is what our world is made of. And that's God at the epicenter of it all. That faith tells us that. There's no two ways about it. And when we see the creation of God's world all around us, and we know what's possible when we use the gifts that come out of God's world, it improves our lives and makes us more advanced citizens and capable in our own lives, because we're stronger in our own lives. The same inconveniences that villagers had 100 years ago, Americans don't have today. The same inconveniences that, the cavemen had, for example, people don't have today. In fact, you see city dwellers today, they get lost in the forest. They have 3 or 4 days tops where wildlife live there all the time with no problem. It's their oasis. But yet, the human being dropped off, all so powerful with their modern gadgets, can last a week in that environment before they, lose the will to survive and the capability. And they can't transform that quick enough. So, for people who say, oh, well, God's world is going backwards, not unless you consider when Rome went into the Dark Ages going forward. If going backwards is God's world, then going backwards is going forwards then, isn't it? Sounds like to me another devil's lie. Sounds like to me another lie of a rich man's jealous fears that he might one day be poor. That's what it sounds like to me. And ultimately speaking, all of our experiences, history, World War II, that stuff has to mean something. Remember, simplify stuff, sure, but never more simple than it actually is. And when it comes to the experiences that people have had throughout their lives, it matters. These things teach us. They're valuable lessons, indeed. And in some cases, we are reliving the same insanity we've already done. Like the way they're trying to fix racism, for example. In some cases, using more hate. Now turning it back on you. Now it's your turn. First I was hurt, now you're going to be hurt. It's not the right way of thinking. And that's why Jesus taught us smart when he said turn the other cheek. Because the prize for doing that was the world of abundance, the world of happiness, the world of love and care. That's what he's really telling you to have, to take. That's the gift he's trying to convey. But yet, people get lost. The message is purposely one that is built to help you get lost. It assists you in getting lost and then leaves you lost. And yet we could be doing so much better, extending life, extending happiness. People that they were worried they were going to go poor and die like poor people are today. Like those ones dying on the streets, they're a great example for what everybody else doesn't want to become. That would be a thing of the past. And it ought to be. With our technical ability, we aren't dealing with what we had in the caveman days or even 20 years ago. I mean, we purposefully don't do things for other people just because it wasn't paid for. We don't have any other better logical reason to hold out sustenance from people that we hold out sustenance from in some form or fashion or way. And I've been on both ends of that. I've worked hard. I've started with nothing. Remember, your HappyHealer lover, when I was only 5 years old, I was in New Jersey with my family. But by the time I was 10 years old, and we progressively had problems and had to move to Florida and got poor, and like all families eventually have some sort of issues in Greedhell. And we went to Romeo, Florida, and I don't know if you know where this is, but it's out in the boonies, especially when the year was 1990. They didn't even get their elementary school until 95. And then all the experiences of being on that 10 acres, and it was hard, man. Hard knocks. We didn't know what was going on in the outside world. We didn't have air conditioning ever. It was always a hot mess, sweating, and just an unpleasant environment to live in. And then my dad was building a home, but it was never getting done because he kept running out of money. So he spent 3 years building a house. And then during that 3 years, we lived in a trailer on that property, and it developed holes in the floor where you would fall through if you took the wrong step, it was a tough upbringing. And many times we didn't have electricity. And that was on the 10 acres. And then there were other times when we were homeless. And so I worked my way up through all that. I learned the hard knocks. And I got a job at Boston Market. It was a minimum wage paying job. I worked my way up through management. I stuck with that job. I was there for 7 years. That's I believe, the national average for a career. And I did that at the age of 15, turning 16, to help my family get off the streets. And after that, through hard work and dedication, I was fast-tracked through the managerial system, and by the time I was 22, turning 23, I started my own business. And I've done quite well with that. Over time, I've built it up to year-over-year sales growth increases, and it was in the charter bus business. And very proud of the accomplishments there. That's a long story in its own right. I'll get into it sometime. And I learned about business and what wealth is. And, recently I took more of a modest turn again. And I'm doing God's work for one thing. And so that doesn't scare me, because I know, ultimately speaking, that I've seen every perspective, and I know what's missing. I see how greed is destroying life at every level. In this class system, the way we believe it to be is, if you're at class 1, where you're dead and dying, well, improve yourself, fix your current circumstances, or you'll die. That's what we tell people. And then, the hope is that they get to class 2 and 3 and sometimes 7 and 10. There is no class. You could be at the billionaire class that is one where you think you've reached this promised land. It doesn't exist in Greedhell. There's all kinds of... You thought it was going to solve the problems. All this money, I could buy anything. And no, you can't actually. Nope. And in fact, billionaires laugh under their breath, because they know all the things you think that they can do. They know that they cannot do those things, not to that extent, not to what you think, because they can't cash out their assets like that. Oftentimes, they're so locked up in their lives, they're in prison. Greedhell sucks for everyone. That is a fact. And that's why it's so deathly. And the thing that makes it continue is that it has fear right alongside of it. It entices you with greed. Here you go. This will make your life a little bit better than everyone else's. You won't have to suffer as much if you just, here you go, little token for you. And then it shows you the fear. But look at everyone who's dying. That's how you get motivated in Greedhell. Unbelievable. But that is how you get motivated in Greedhell. In the world of God's love, it's about how, like you would do with a family, you care. And that's how you get motivated. You're inspired. Now, anybody and everybody has the ability to dream and believe that if they apply themselves, like how we teach, they can really be something, because their country and their other participants in this life care about them and want to see them successful. It's such a beautiful world, really. All right, so I wanted to go over that question, and I hope that was a good answer for the question that was asked. It means a lot to me too. And maybe if you have a more specific question, not just overall, because I can go on for days. If you're looking for me to eventually talk about what you're really wanting to get at, if I didn't touch it, then be more specific. Very important, because there's such a vast amount of information that I'm pulling from when it comes to Happy Healing. Happy Healing is a huge animal, and it has a head, a body, and a tail, It's the truth. It's God's truth. And it's love. But it's one thing. It's a whole thing. And it makes sense. It makes sense. When something is true at the head, and if you followed it to the tail, well, everything's going to make sense about that, the length of distance from the truth. So in other words, happy healing has been tried and tested by yours truly. I actively work to challenge it and to falsify the belief in how truth and love is so effective. What do you know? What do you know? In that it gets so deep in how it can resolve issues, but yet is simple to the extent that it's love and truth. You know instinctively how to apply that. Be honest, to a fault. Try that. And love. I mean, these are the virtues we talk about, but also we know these are the virtues that Greedhell has people lying about, obviously, because greed is festering very hard in this world. So, I really appreciate you guys so much in the bottom of my Happy Healer lover heart. I pray every day for our success and for me to be more effective in speaking to you. I have a video that I actually wanted to put on, but we ran on for quite a while here. What I'll probably do is put it up on Friday. Remember, we go Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 7 p.m. sharp. Every single week, you can count on that. And if there's something you're dealing with, and if you discuss it with me, or if you ask me about it, then I'll discuss it on the show, just like I did with the last question, because I love you guys. I want to see things go, I want to see God's plan work for us. And I often, talk about Donald Trump as being part of God's plan. He opened the way. He paved the way, nonetheless, to a better world, to a more realistic world, one where people weren't, in the masses, weren't so fooled, thinking and believing everything the news was saying. And, it just got really deep. And so, in that aspect, we are making progress, but we have to be very careful. I've been seeing a lot of people get the truth, but then come up with an ultimate solution that's not good. That is a solution made in Greedhell, is what I call them. I love these folks to death, but they're not viewing the world as I do. And that's the conversation I really think it's time to have, because the heart in people, it's coming out. People are all over the country speaking about love, speaking about this feeling that's coming out of them. This is God working through our lives. And I say, don't judge God's plan. I certainly don't. I love all. I love Trump. I supported him in 2 elections. The one that I didn't run in, and then when I was inspired and did run, I ultimately voted for him because I was not a factor in the election, and I supported him over, obviously, Biden. So, and I just want to see this world of unity come about that we talk about, and that's so important. And you know what we'll close on tonight? The video that I played yesterday. I know that some of you said, oh, that was really enjoyable. The one where I spoke in front of the Trump supporters, and they were hoorahing and coming up and shaking my hand, and we had a great experience together. Yeah, I figured that would be a great video to play on the way out tonight. And so look forward to that. If you were at the Orlando Trump rally when he first announced, well, you might see yourself on the video, and you might remember your Happy Healer from being there. Wouldn't that be great? Well, that's what happened, and I remember that event, and I think that That was a great event. I enjoyed it. I heard all the Trump clan speaking, and I met a lot of wonderful people. And, I do that all over. I've been to a bunch of Trump events. First as just I'm a Trump supporter. So I'd go walking in and enjoy the experience. And, man, there'd always be a ton of people. And, there'd be people from all walks of life, too. And lovers, a lot of lovers. And that's what America is. And those are the people that are out to transform America. That's what AmericanMantics is. And that's where we're headed. If you want to be in the future, if you want to be the solution, the right solution, one that you can put into action, unlike anything else, everybody else just sees the problem and does nothing about it. That's how you know Greedhell is in control. The answer is in the truth. And what this allows for us is a way out that it's actionable intelligence. That's what was lacking. There's no direction. And everything and all this information we're getting, it's one big cluster. There's no direction for people. So that's what happy healing ultimately is. And that's what AmericanMantics as an ideological system to living life, a happy life, and to creating a unity that works in America, that is really putting human values first. Everything from, dealing with abortion that is like an archaic thing now that we've been able to resolve people who wish not to have pregnancies in other ways. It's unbelievable that we continue doing these archaic things, except for that they have some value in Greedhell that Greedhell hangs on to. It's a profitable thing. It's an evil thing, for one thing. And there are those people that get off on that. There are the devil worshippers. So, yeah. And the human values is complete. Everything from dealing with abortion to having health care for all. 70+% of Americans believe that people should be covered. I mean, I have a bad back, and I've been this entire time without health care because it's just not a thing. I mean, yeah, we need better health care too. I talk about that. My brother just recently died. Greedhell virtually gets them both wrong. So we need to increase our health care and make it better. And that's something Greedhell will never get right, because it's always focused on profit over people. And that's not putting value in people. When you put value in people and the experience of people, well, now you're getting to the very root of what government is for and what the markets were invented for, to serve the people. So they'll get right back to what they're meant to do, and corruption will lose its energies that was, its tentacles that was deep into the system. And that's what getting rid of that dark force that's driving people to death means. It's actionable, it's intelligible, and it gives you a way. It gives you something to focus on and a word to spread. That's one thing that we're going to be working on moving forward, is like a 10 or 20 point plan that describes AmericanMantics, that is simplified, that we can use. It's God's plan to thus help explain, and so others can also explain and understand what AmericanMantics is as a system. And also, as a community, I encourage you to step in if you want to have any kind of word in any of this. Everybody has always and at all times, just like when I get these emails, an open and honest communication policy. So that's the way we'll do that. Well, it's almost been an hour, and what I'd like to do now is close like I promised. I'll be back. I'm not closing yet, but we'll play the video from yesterday. I'm sorry, from 2 years ago. It's when Trump first announced his presidency for 2020. Enjoy. Once I get it in the system, hang on. Okay, enjoy.
Hello. How many people here for the HappyHealer? Anybody? The worst aspects of the human spirit. How are you, sir? God bless you. Thank you. Thank you. They say that everything's great. And the people who like the system now, they're scared too. They're suffering. They see everyone else suffering even worse, and they step back. They say, oh, I'm lucky. They really want to dream.
Hey, go, brother. Good.
Who do you support for president? You're here for Trump. Because here's my goal. My goal is to turn Trump people. Well, I'm a lot younger. I'm 40. But here's the goal.
What's your name?
I'm Keith Landy. I'm running on the Democratic side for the Keith Landy. And the best way to find me, folks, is HappyHealerForPresident.com. HappyHealer for President. This country needs a happy healer. That's why you're Happy Healer. That is to say, me, Keith Landy, is running for president because we have serious times and we need serious people to solve those serious issues. And what we have right now are people who are focused on their own greedy agenda, their own political agenda, their own ideas with a tight lip and no open ears and no open mind and no love. Where is the capacity to have loved God? We're the 25% of the global economy, yet 5% of the world's population. You better believe the American spirit has ingenuity. You better believe the American story is one of an exceptional one. But yet look where the American stands today. And yes, I've seen him. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the drug addiction and the drug epidemic in this country too. It's not funny how they turn the world upside down on us. Well, in this campaign, we're going to right upside that world, and we're going to write up the rightful dream to the American people that provides the health care for the people that they need, that provides an income for all, $5,000 for a family of four, that provides the essence of life and the appreciation of life, one that says to take humanity first, you have to have common sense humanity policies. You can't just say what's right for the Democrats or what's right for the Republicans. You got to have an agenda that's for humanity. And humanity in America, we matter. We matter. They're trying to tell us we don't matter, or they're trying to tell us that their agenda is more important, that they're trying to confuse us, but we matter. Don't let them tell you no different. We matter. You matter, I matter, we all matter. That indeed is why I call myself the Happy Healer, because we have so much hate in this country, because we have to spend this time spreading love and talking about the truth that other people are not willing to talk about. They have no courage, folks. These are truths that you likely never heard before.
All right, that's fantabulous. I hope you enjoyed that. And keep in mind that I love you guys. I want you to really pray about our country. You know, it's great to have everyone thinking about one another. That's a strong force when we get it working through our community and through all people. I do it, and it helps lift me up. We deal with heavy things here, and I want you to be strong. And so lean on your Happy Healer. Don't be afraid to lean on me. I am a mighty person in my own right, just as I'm sure you are. I certainly lean on you. And I'm not going anywhere, so you can rest assured that we'll be taking this to somewhere special, because I've been around for a long time. These are my beliefs. I've seen the alternative, and I just don't accept it. I see the death, I see the hell, and I see the destruction. I see the lack of human value. It's not the world that I like at all. I do not accept it. I think we could do better, and I know we thrive and want to do better, and we thrive when we do better. And so that's worth talking about. Don't allow Greedhell and its mocking devils to break down the values and virtues of a world of based on love and truth. And also in your own life, I challenge you. Most people are not living to the rules of love and truth. But let's say you're having some problems with people in any area or dealing with things. Use love and truth. Love will make sure that you're treating people with the value that they have. And truth will make sure that you keep honest about the situation so that you don't make yourself a target. You don't make yourself someone taken advantage of, like nice guys finishing last. That's one of the things people often think. They think, oh, well, I'd like to live by love, but when I do that, everybody takes advantage of me. Well, truth gets in the way of that. You wouldn't allow that because you know what they're doing. Don't allow their bad, greedy actions to take away from the efforts of love. Now, I always talk about being effective for love. That's what that means. Knowing the difference. So, all right, I enjoyed this program today. I think we talked about a lot of stuff. Not as much really as I wanted to get into, but I think we did have a pretty good discussion. And unlike a lot of the other ones where I have prepared media, today was just a little hectic, so I didn't have any prepared media for you. But I'm still here, and it's the AmericanMantics program advancing, and we'll continue the things that help expand and show what that is in each one of these Monday, Wednesday, and Friday showtimes at 7 p.m. essentially, live casts. And we'll also keep a good eye on our guy Trump and see what he's doing, and pray for everybody. Pray for love, pray for truth. Recently, by the way, our group was cited for having misinformation put in the group. Now, they said if the group continues to get strikes of that order, then they can take action, and they just might take action. So they are watching our love and truth group, so please be careful. And my relationship with you matters a lot to me. Also, add me on Twitter if you like. That's going to be very strong because I do post there. And add me on Twitter at HappyHealer 4 FOR the number 1 unity, HappyHealer 41, and that's on Twitter. And so this way we will always be able to stay in touch. It's always important to do that. And so Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays will be here on the program, and we'll always be in the groups and in the pages if you're familiar with how they work. But no matter if you're familiar or not, you get updates, you're responding to them, they're working in your life, they're making a difference, and that's what it's all for. So please be careful with the stuff you're putting out. Make sure that you're capable of I think they're unfair with a lot of their truth stuff. They kind of choose subject rather than if it's true or not. Anything that involves vaccines,
is off limits. Anything that involves, like this is where they're going. I don't like it. I value our group. I value our people. So do your best to help us keep this alive and our special thing going. And I'll see you on Friday at 7 p.m. God bless you and good night.